how joint venture development projects can become a viable alternative survival mechanism for architectural practices during economically challenging times. The global financial crisis of 2008 redefined architectural practice as a large number of new small firms fiercely competing against well-established architectural firms over a declining number of projects. This fierce competition over commission projects now requires an in-depth evaluation of the old fee-based business model in order to be able to survive economically challenging times. In this research paper, we start examining the evolution of the architectural practice in order to better understand why architects have over time lost control of the economic system governing the building industry, and how by altering or replacing their existing fee-based business model, they can better control their future. One such alternative is a hybrid business model that combines fee-based projects with profit-based developmental joint venture projects. By examining the challenges of a land development joint venture case study in Dubai, UAE, and further analyzing its learning, this paper recommends a set of risk management strategies that should help secure the financial merits of the proposed hybrid business model. As defined by Wang and Ilham, architects are generalists who combine materials from different domains of knowledge with creative power to produce a design. Historically, architects were in control of the complete building process, starting from the conceptual design all the way to the supervision and handover. In recent years, the roles of the architects in the value chain has changed dramatically. More clients are appointing project managers to supervise and coordinate the complete project, reducing the authority and direct connection between the architect and the client. In some cases, architects have been relegated to one of many packages of consultants in a project, happily willing to forego their responsibilities and liabilities in order to safeguard their creative acclaim. The need for creative acclaim has unfortunately come at the very heavy cost of struggling business models. In reality, this should not be the case, since architecture is art applied to practical elements of our life, rather than art just for its own sake. Architect should not be ashamed in wanting to also make a profit. Economic success should not be considered as a wholesale sellout to commercialism, but rather during economically challenging times to have the ability to control some parts of the economic system governing the building industry can help architects carry out the work and survive. The current market for small to medium architectural firms is that there are comparatively more sellers than buyers, raising the question of how it can provide a unique resource to stand out from the competition. Contrary to the common belief that architects' signature style is what sets them apart from their competitors, most clients select their architect based on price and personal connection, or ease of working with one architect over the other. After the global financial crisis of 2008, most countries saw massive layoffs, high staff turnover, and even the reduction of the working week from 5 days down to 4. The impact of the layoffs on their architectural practice, in addition to the growing stream of new fresh graduates, meant that for many architects the only hope of practice was either as freelancers or to attempt at setting up their own small firm. This change was characterized by a large number of very small firms competing against existing well-established architectural firms over a handful of commissions. In other words, it has been the survival of the small fish in a big pond. A further challenge facing most small firms and freelancers is the inability to deal with the uncertainty in their work due to the unique nature of every project, and the fact that typically the value of the architectural service is not clear in the beginning of a design process. This challenge leads to them having to either provide a lot more service than what they had anticipated in their original fee proposal, or to make a tough decision of having to compromise their creative claims for satisfying their clients' ever-increasing demand of short-term needs. As Heinz, Arnada Mena highlighted in their 2012 paper, the problem facing startup firms or in transition from small to medium or medium to large firms during difficult, economically challenging times is not to look at the design-oriented solution, but rather at the business perspective. They need to alter or replace their existing business model to survive the ongoing societal and industrial changes. As defined by Afua and Tucci, a good business model should be able to describe the process of how a design practice can create, deliver, and capture values for a network of exchanged partners. A successful business model helps design firms either to further exploit standard fee-based business opportunities by creating value for its clients while generating a profit, or looking at a hybrid alternative fee-based project combined with an architects as developers or members of a development team that initiates, design, and constructs projects for a profit. This paper aims to look more at the hybrid option, not only based on its financial merits, but also on the ability of the architects to contribute to his or her expertise at a much earlier stage of a building process, to eliminate the typical set of preconceived solutions that generally restrict the ability to produce quality design solutions. As stakeholders in development projects, architects can have a much greater freedom in the outcome of the final design and build. The ability of an architectural firm to make more money through development projects than the standard professional fee is what can ultimately help a design firm survive difficult financial downturn. This, of course, requires a much greater financial literacy by the principal or partners of the design firm, who can either choose to use their own financial capital, if available, or joint venture with other investors, landowners, or contractors. Mohammed and Torrance's definition of a joint venture is when two or more parties jointly execute a commercial enterprise, such as a development project. This enterprise may be as a consortium of professionals, partnership, or joint venture. More specifically, joint ventures for architects can be an arrangement where an individual or an institutional investor provide partial or most of the cash or land equity, and the architectural firm provides the technical and managerial skills required for their design, supervision, and completion of the development project. The advantages of a joint ventures for small to medium-sized firms with the insufficient financials is that it can prove an effective method of obtaining the necessary financial resources in exchange for technical and professional knowledge and experience, which is very well needed to navigate the dynamic, risky, but rewarding field of the construction industry. Generally, joint ventures consist of 6 major stages: the initiation stage, the early partners agreement stage, the learning stage, the change in dependency stage, the buyout stage, and the termination stage. Even though all stages of a joint venture could potentially be challenging, the first 2 are the most critical from the perspective of an assessment of risk management. It is this stage of initiation where the land, project specifics, and choice of partners is usually made. In the partner agreement stage, it is critical that the Article of Association is not vague and prepared only after careful consideration of the project's objectives, risk and strategies of all the participants, both at the time of the formation and as they might evolve or terminate in the future. Joint ventures, like all business ventures, have their fair share of benefits and challenges. Through the following case study, we will further examine some of the challenges and their possible risk management solutions. The following case study is based on my personal experience with a joint venture developmental project aimed to better evaluate the potentiality of developmental joint venture projects as an optional survival mechanism during financially challenging times. Having established a small architectural firm in Dubai, UAE in 2009, I was facing major financial challenges. Almost all projects were either suspended or cancelled in a short period of time. The handful of active projects had their fees heavily renegotiated and discounted by the client. It was at this time that a British developer approached me with the proposition of a joint venture development project. The proposal was to design and build a custom luxury villa on a plot that he had purchased directly from the developer on the tip of one of the fonts of the Palm Jumeirah. The basic terms of the joint venture were that in return for the land and the fund for the construction, my design firm would provide the full technical support for the build. This would include architecture, interior design, tendering, negotiation, and the supervision of the work. The land being in prime location of Dubai, the owner was happy to give full creative design freedom as long as we could adhere to the maximum built-up area, construction budget, and the project completion schedule. At the start of the negotiation, the proposal did not sound different to other fee-based projects, except for the fact that our fees would be paid at the time of the sale of the home and as a share of the profit. After visiting the site and carefully reviewing the owner's business proposal and financial model, it was clear that such a project on the proposed location was unique and different from the existing developmental projects in Dubai, and as a result would have great potential despite the financial crisis of the time. Having completed a more extensive due diligence that would have covered issues pertaining to owner's background, in-depth market analysis, and land survey, I proceeded to prepare a joint venture agreement based on a typical fee-based contract. In foresight, many of the challenges that will be covered in the next section could have either been eliminated or reduced had both parties spent more time in the initiation and early partnership agreement stage, carefully and more diligently assessing the risk and ensuring that the joint venture agreement clearly covered issues such as division of responsibilities, risk management, conflict of interest, conflict management, and terms and conditions for termination and/or breach of contract. As with all architecture and civil projects, joint venture development had its own fair share of challenges, not so much in the design process, but rather in supervision, construction, and managing issues pertaining to conflict of interest, breach of trust, and expectations of the partners. As soon as the preliminary building permit application was submitted to the master developer, we were informed that regardless of the fact that the design had proposed a piling system, due to the fact that the entire Palm Jumeirah project was a land reclamation project, the regulations required soil improvement. In order to balance out the extra cost of the soil improvement, the structural drawings had to be revised at the expense of the design team. To make matters worse, once the soil improvements commenced, the main underground utility cables were detected, and that required further months of delays, negotiation, and costly relocation. These initial challenges could have been easily mitigated if the land was purchased after completing a thorough site survey and a much deeper understanding of the master developer's regulations and policies. Despite the fact that the project went through a thorough tender review process by external qualified quantity surveyors, the extent of the financial challenges of the selected main contractor was not highlighted until the generators powering the site came to a full shutdown. Despite clear instructions, the contractor started communicating directly with the landowner as a desperate attempt to divide and conquer in order to increase his cash advance and revise the agreed payment structure. After a heated debate between the joint venture partners, the contractor's request was declined, and instead, the architectural team, as a desperate final measure, took over managing the daily cash flow of the contractor, and all payments to suppliers and subcontractors did not only cause further cost and delays to the project, but rather planted the seed of distrust among the partners that could have been addressed if the initial joint venture formation had established rules of the road on communication. With time, the distrust further extended and the landlord's expectation from his architect partner grew, without any desire to renegotiate an increase in the profit share beyond the initial scope of work. The final blow was when the landlord used the extra unwarranted work, which was eventually completed by the design team after much contention, as an excuse for attempting not to settle the full agreed profit share. It is unclear if the distrust was due to poor ethical values or inadequate cultural understandings. Despite the eventual full settlement of the share of the profit, failure to respect the joint venture agreement effectively eliminated any chance of future collaborations. The aim of the above stated case study and narrative was the potential learning, which can only be obtained by closely monitoring human behavior within an alliance. As stated by Park and Ungsom, the behavior within a joint venture is influenced by three conditions: X and condition referring to the condition at the time of the alliance formation, in situ conditions that are force affecting the development of a partnership, and ex post condition, which relates to the outcome of an alliance. For the sake of this discussion, we will be concentrating mainly on the ex ante and the in situ conditions and learnings. The stated case study clearly demonstrated that in order to assure a much higher level of performance in a joint venture, attention must be given at the time of the formation to both an in-depth business model study and a comprehensive joint venture agreement. Due diligence required for a business model should cover at the minimum partners' audit to understand strengths and weaknesses, understanding of local regulation, land survey, feasibility study, market condition, appraisal, and an investment analysis. Once the business model is completed and all parties satisfied with the outcomes, the joint venture agreement should be prepared taking into consideration some of the following points: a detailed planning of the joint venture structure, character, and operation, a clear definition of the partner's role and responsibilities, alignment of financial expectations, alignment and agreement on core values, rules of the road pertaining to the channels of communication, identification of potential project challenges and proposed risk management solution, addressing potential scope extension and how it can be addressed within the framework of the agreement, addressing cultural issues, eliminating as many preconceptions or expectations that might exist, a clear, fair, and tangible exit strategy for all partners. The stated list is by no means the full extent of all the points that need to be covered under a strong joint venture agreement, nor is it possible that the breakup of a joint venture be a signal of failure. It is important to note that with each breakdown of an association and or partnership, there are major learnings that is to be gained and hopefully not to be repeated in future alliances. By reviewing the challenges stated in the case study and the following sections, it is understandable to conclude that joint venture development projects are high risk and therefore not viable option for architectural practices. This would be partially correct if design firms typically have an extensive list of fee-based clients, or financial recessions can be predicted to ensure the necessary precautions are taken. Most small to medium-sized architectural firms are not so privileged and therefore should establish an alternative to a fee-based model as a survival mechanism. Development joint ventures would be a natural profit-based solution, since architects can make more money in land development than they can in professional fees. Clearly, anything related to construction industry has a high level of risk and responsibility, and if the risk is managed and the responsibility is shared amicably, the profit could outweigh the obstacles. The above case study demonstrates that the principal challenges for most joint ventures, especially property development joint ventures, are poor management mechanism in areas of operations and control, a lack of trust, inability to communicate effectively, and differences in organizational cultures. Due to time, I am unable to go into more details of these challenges, but they are elaborated further in the paper. Joint venture development projects, if managed well, can not only be a survival mechanism during financially challenging times, but can also establish a practice design credibility both amongst the fellow architectural peers and potential future clients. It is high time for architects to regain their voice in the construction industry as the master builder, who is not only in control and responsible of its own future, but also a major player in the process of developing a more sustainable built environment. Thank you for your attention.